We have a special distinguished guest that has come a long way to join us. And I'll tell you that in 2019, I didn't know that this work would provide me a global Black family, movement family. And yes. And so we're working in our neighborhoods. We are synchronizing our efforts across the nation, but know that we are part of a global community that is fighting for repair and liberation for people of African descent all over this world. And that has taken many of us far beyond the United States to the United Nations and to all kinds of places. Accra, and under the leadership of Cam Howard, we went to the Vatican City to deliver a presentment. And our next distinguished guest, I met somewhere out in the world. I think it was Accra, actually. We met in Accra at a global reparations conference. And we are very grateful that she has come all the way from Jamaica to join us today, representing CARICOM. Who here is familiar with the work of CARICOM? It has inspired the work that we're doing here nationally. I would believe that it inspired even the 10-point plan that we follow at NARC. And as a proud NARC commissioner, I'm very grateful to have been introduced to the global community fighting for reparations. But today we have Laleta Davis Mattis. She's the University General Counsel, Office of the Vice Chancellor from the University of the West Indies. Yes. And we had the great pleasure to recently visit the University of the West Indies about a month ago. First Repair went there, and we were able to go to the Center for Reparations Research, and it was National Heritage Day, and we went to Emancipation Park and all of these things. So when you go to Jamaica, please don't stop at a resort at Montego Bay and not get into the community. Please do make it to Kingston and meet with our movement family wherever you go. And we are fortunate that we are going to have greetings. If you could join us for greetings, please, Ms. Laleta. Thank you so much for coming all this way to join us.
Thank you very much. And let me also say, apart from being General Counsel, my primary work here today is I am chair of the National Council on Reparation in Jamaica, and I'm also a member of the CARICOM Reparations Commission. So I'm just going to tell you a little bit about that work. So in 2009, the Jamaican Parliament, and it's one struggle, as Robin has said, really one struggle. We're all from the same place. We ended up in different places. The damage is the same, but our context end up being a little different, okay? And I just want to give an, for example, in Jamaica, we don't need to teach our kids to drive while being Black. We're all Black. So our contexts have ended up a little different. I made a comment recently by saying the children have flown the coop a long time ago, and we have also developed our own cultures in a way about having our own African retention. So in 2009, the government of Jamaica, by bipartisan consensus, and that's very important, because in Jamaica there are two main political parties. In the US you have Democrats and Republicans. In Jamaica we have two main political parties. Those two political parties came together in 2009 and made a decision that the country must pursue reparatory justice, right? So that's in Parliament. Out of that came a national commission, and that was later changed to a national council. A few years later, CARICOM, which is the Caribbean community, comprising all the former colonies of the British and associate states, and some of our states in the Caribbean are still territories, which means that they are not independent states. These countries came together as well, developed their own governance program, and decided that there's also going to be a CARICOM Reparation Commission. What that means is in every Caribbean country, there is a national commission on reparation, and we are all working together to achieve a CARICOM objective, as well as looking at what we need to do in our own respective countries. So we are working together individually as countries, but we are also working together collectively as CARICOM. So I come to you today from the National Council on Reparation, and that's led by our Minister of Culture, Gender, Entertainment and Sport, and she's the Honorable Olivia Grange. We also have the CARICOM Reparations Council, and the chair is Professor Sir Hilary Beckles, and there's also a Prime Ministerial Subcommittee of CARICOM dealing with reparation as well. So it is a regional movement. So in a nutshell, what are we doing? And I just want to focus a little bit on Jamaica. Now, I've heard a lot being said here about what's going on, and there's a little saying that we have back home, and it's this: if America sneezes, we catch the cold. All right? So that's the saying that we have, which means that whatever happens on this part of this continent, this North American continent, affects us in the Caribbean. Now, what we have decided to do as Jamaica is to prepare a roadmap for the government of Jamaica. And the roadmap is really to almost prescribe the path toward reparation. So we have done a number of things. CARICOM has written to all the former colonial governments. They have not responded, and if you have been following the news, the former British Prime Minister did come basically and say, let's move along, let's get along, and they promised us a prison. And of course, we rejected the prison. So in terms of the roadmap, what are we looking at? We are looking at identifying the damages which are global. And we are focusing on some specific areas like education. And what we want to do is to literally tell our own story. Our story did not begin when our ancestors went on the slave ships. That's not where our story began. So we are telling our children our own story, and we're starting from kindergarten. So we are starting from 3 years old. So in Jamaica, formal education starts a little earlier. So we actually begin teaching our children about 2 and 3 years old. So from that age, that's what we are doing. So we are developing a program with the Ministry of Education to do just that. And what are we doing? We are not creating new subjects, we are creating new content. And the content will permeate all the curricular areas. So if we are teaching biology, we are going to utilize the history to teach biology. If we are teaching physics, that's what we're going to do. And if we are teaching whatever, if it's geography, that's what we're going to do. So we are giving our educators the content and to teach them how to incorporate that content in the various subject areas. In terms of we're also looking at health. So we know what the health issues are. We saw that during COVID. And so the health ministry in government, we're really looking at all these studies relating to salt and sugar. And in fact, there is a big thrust now to reduce sugar and salt in the diet. So there are big advertisements going out. We are encouraging schools. In fact, schools were told to reduce the sugar in the diet of our children. So there is a lot of initiative going on in those areas as well. We're also looking at agriculture. We're looking at a number of areas. Now, we are primarily at this point in Jamaica, apart from looking at global reparation, we are looking at what we call internal reparation. And that's very important for us. It's an internal repair where we are saying to ourselves, as a country, let us look at what we have done to perpetuate some of the ills. And therefore, how do we correct those? So some of these initiatives of which I speak are initiatives that are geared towards our own internal repair as we prepare our people for reparation. So our council is divided into different groups. For example, we have a legal subcommittee, we have a church subcommittee, and the church subcommittee interfaces with the church. And the church actually has come up with a 7-point plan. So CARICOM has a 10-point plan, and the church is doing its own global work. We are also in dialogue with families who have been coming forward and they have been apologizing, and they come with their apology. And in fact, there's a group called Friends of Slavery, and we are interfacing with them now. So these are families who have recognized that their wealth is a derivative of the enslavement of Africans. And so they want to contribute. So our stance is, we want to meet with you because we want to understand the agenda and we want to understand how you can facilitate our agenda. So we are meeting with them. In terms of our work as well, we just almost completed a text called 100 Facts on Reparation, which is going to be written and illustrated in a way that the coconut vendor, we have coconut vendors at home, can actually take that book and read it as well. We are currently in a constitutional reform process as well. I'm also a member of the Constitutional Reform Committee in Jamaica. And in that process, we are also looking at are there any areas of the Constitution that needs reform within the context of reparation. And just to also add that we do have other groups in Jamaica and other rights issues that also emanate from the whole history of our enslavement. We have, for example, our Maroons, we have our Rastafarians, for example, and in fact, we have a Taino group that are now asserting their own rights and their own presence in Jamaica. So there are a lot of issues that we are addressing, but we are working them through little by little. So in a nutshell, I know I'm not on the program, so I'm being very frugal with my time. In a nutshell, that encapsulates our work and the work of the CARICOM Commission. I think it was Ron that said it last night, that CARICOM is really, I would describe as a force, a global force, as we push forward with this reparation agenda. And I think for us, we understand that this is a global movement, that our work in the Caribbean is only a part of a larger work, and that we have to work together, because at the end of the day, we are learning from each other. Yes, we are seeking reparation primarily from the British, right, but we also have other nations. And I also made a comment to a colleague yesterday. Remember, this trade was a well-oiled machine. A well-oiled machine. And for me, it was a European collaboration, right? So when you look at all the countries that were involved, there are other countries. So even when I looked at the document that you had today, I think we should specifically include countries who provided goods and services to facilitate the trade. Because this trade was not only a trade in people. And just in closing, I also want to say we are also deconstructing our language, and that's very deliberate. So we are not, we're almost removing the word slaves, because we're saying our people were enslaved Africans, that's what we are saying. We are completely changing this whole notion of a slave trade. It was a transatlantic trafficking in Africans. So even in our language, we are changing the language to reflect the reality of who we are and to basically redefine. In other words, we are so accustomed to being told who we are. If they say we are black, we say we are black. If they say we are people of color, we say yes, we are people of color. They call us Negroes, and we say yes, we are Negroes. And we believe that it's about time that we define ourselves, and as part of our education program in the Caribbean, we are actually asking ourselves, for example, in the case of Jamaica, what is the profile of a Jamaican child at age 6? So if we can fix it here and here, I think we're good at a good start. Thank you.
Thank you. Much gratitude for you being here with us today. So we're going to move into our working session number 2. Met this incredible artivist actually on social media and immediately became a fan and followed her work, was inspired, and saw how it really tells the case of reparations in a very aesthetic way, more so than we might be able to do. And very grateful to have met this young woman who now serves on the First Repair Board and has been an incredible value to us already. She is a friend, and I have an absolute reparations crush on Miss Tonika Johnson. Please join us. Yeah.
Oh, thank you so much. I am new to the reparations community, but my personal values, my life values have been aligned for a long time, and I really appreciate Robin reaching out to me to help me find another tribe. I create projects that help educate the larger public about systemic issues. And while I was here today, I realized how important the bridge must be between the reparations community and our creative community, specifically Black creatives. Dr. Tillery talked a lot about message testing, design experiment, proving beyond a shadow of a doubt the impact of historic racism on Black people, property-based wealth deprivation, and all of that is where the Black creatives can be instrumental in moving that message forward and helping educate people and ultimately popularizing this conversation that we're having. And so that's what I'm gonna talk to you today about. A couple of my projects, and I'm trying to put the timer on so I can't, okay. A couple of my projects that kind of prove that point. The primary project that brought me to the larger Chicago public is a project called Folded Map. I'm not going to be talking about that project today, but if you're interested in learning more about it, you can actually use this QR code to the animated film about the project. It explains the origin of it. That's the QR code. The password is Empathy 2020. We can make sure that you also get the link via the app and emails. But I wanted to explain that project so that you can understand how it led to the current one that is directly related to reparations. All of my projects are rooted in the neighborhood that I'm from, Greater Inglewood, and just to kind of, it's just to stress the point, I'm gonna do a little test. You know, I think I'm the artistic alter ego of Dr. Tilley because I love polling, but I do it in a different way. I do it in an immersive way. So I would like for everyone who is visiting Chicago to raise their hand. All right, now everybody keep your hand raised, now look around. That's about everybody. Put your hands down. I want you to raise your hands if you have been told or given the advice to not go to the south side of Chicago or the west side because it is dangerous. Raise your hand if you have heard that or have been told that. All right, now look around. Keep them raised, keep them raised. That's almost everybody. That is a byproduct of systemic racism. That is how systemic segregation gets perpetuated. And that was the point of my Folded Map project, to help people understand that. And since I am from the neighborhood that is the poster child of everything wrong in Chicago, I want to just kind of give you all some statistics on Greater Inglewood and Chicago in general, since you all are visitors. This is a map of Chicago. I'm a map nerd as well. Chicago is unique. We're on a reticular grid, which means that we have addresses that match each other on the different sides of the city. And we are also the most segregated because our segregation has not shifted. It's only deepened. So this map that you're looking at, the pink purplish part of the map, that is referred to as Chicago's north side. Evanston is right above that pink purplish part. That's where we are right now. The blue, turquoise blue part of the map, that is the south side of Chicago. And the south side of Chicago is where I'm from. It's where Greater Inglewood is. And let me give you context to the specific colors. The blue part, the turquoise blue that you see, those are the neighborhoods that are predominantly Black. The pink purplish that you see, those are the neighborhoods that are predominantly white. The orangish that you see on the map, those are the neighborhoods that are predominantly Latino. And the neon green in the center of the map and speckled throughout the top, those are the neighborhoods that are predominantly Asian. So as you can see, Chicago is deeply segregated. And so my Folded Map project actually helps disrupt segregation by actually bringing people who live on the same street, because in Chicago we have streets that run the entire course of the city, 15, 18 miles. And some of those same streets exist in those racially and economically different neighborhoods. And so my project brought what I would call map twins together to have a conversation about their neighborhood and about the city. And so I'm going to share with you just a small part of the hour-long conversation of all of the map twins who met each other, but specifically Bridget and Carmen. Carmen is 6400 South Winchester resident, and her map twin Bridget is on the north side, is 5900 North Winchester. I asked all of the map twins a series of questions. I had about 5 map twins, which included about 14 people, because each household had a different number of people. And one of the questions that I asked all of the map twins was, how much did your house cost? And this is just a small snippet of what I call social justice reality TV, because the hour-long footage of all of the map twins meeting, it explains a lot about the kind of convincing and work that we have to do.
So it's amazing how much Chicago has shifted just in the last couple of years. And when I bought my house 7 years ago, I feel like there was still, Rogers Park was still somewhat affordable in comparison to a lot of Chicago neighborhoods. So I knew I wanted something under $400,000 was what I was looking for. I know you're like, well, hold on a second.
And Carmen, you said this building has been in your family, so can you talk about it? Oh, can we turn it up? It's important that they hear this. Well, while he's going to turn it up, I do want to go back to this slide to share with you all just some statistics about my neighborhood in case you all were just paying attention to me and not reading. Greater Englewood includes 2 neighborhoods, Englewood and West Englewood. Those 2 neighborhoods together make up Greater Englewood. It is the 3rd largest neighborhood in Chicago, over 6 square miles, very big. It is 99% black. The home ownership rate hovers around 30%, and that's what I want you all to remember and think about. We have now 18 closed schools. Exactly. But that's not a surprise once you know that our home ownership rate is low, right? Majority of those closings happened during the Rahm administration, our mayor. We had nearly 3,000 housing units demolished just between 2010 and 2020. As a result of demolishing those houses, obviously they create vacant lots. So of course, if we had the largest loss of any community area with demolished units, of course now we have the largest number of vacant lots. And a lot of them are city-owned and owned by Cook County Land Bank. So now that you know that about my neighborhood, that's where I'm from, okay? And just for those that didn't hear, this is the question that the map twins are answering: how much did your house cost?
So it's amazing how much Chicago has shifted
better?
just in the last couple of years. And when I bought my house 7 years ago, I feel like there was still, Rogers Park was still somewhat affordable in comparison to a lot of Chicago neighborhoods. So I knew I wanted something under $400,000 was what I was looking for. Yeah. I know you're like, well, hold on a second.
And Carmen, you said this building has been in your family, so can you talk about kind of the purchase history? Do you know how much it cost at the time? Or?
No, but I believe it probably was $30,000, you know, but in '74 that was a lot of money, but 30,000, and I think it's probably worth a lot more than that now, but never know.
Exactly. So when we talk about property-based wealth deprivation, this is just one of many examples. So my folded map project, as well as the project I'm going to explain to you, is really aimed to highlight this point: low property values in black neighborhoods, black people having the lowest home ownership rate nationally is racism's lasting impact. The proof is in those numbers. And so even though Greater Englewood's home ownership rate has been around 30%, hovering around that my whole entire life, I wanted to know, what significantly contributed to that 30%. Because a lot of people say, oh, the housing market crash and all of those things, but our home ownership rate was low way before that. And I didn't understand why. Until a report came out called The Plunder of Black Wealth in Chicago. And it revealed that not only redlining is the reason, but because Black people were redlined into certain communities, that meant it made it easy to discriminate against them. So they became victims to predatory housing practices like land sale contracts. And so I'm gonna play a small clip of the documentary called The Color Tax, explaining what a land sale contract is, but also to help you understand how this particular discriminatory practice contributed to not only Greater Inglewood's low home ownership rate, but many Black neighborhoods.
This is really the origin, in a modern sense, of the racial wealth gap in the United States. And in order to understand that story of how African Americans continue to be at such a position of disadvantage relative to whites all through the 20th century into the 21st century, long after the legal reforms of the Civil Rights Movement, to understand the perpetuation of that gap, we have to return back to this period and understand what were the mechanisms that put Blacks at such disadvantages relative to whites.
Like many Americans, Sally and Albert Bolton aspired to a home in the suburbs or a better neighborhood inside the city. But in the 1950s, those options weren't open to Black families. So they made a down payment on a house in what was called Chicago's Black Belt. For 2 years, they met their monthly mortgage payments on time. Then one day, they received an eviction notice for being late. One time on one payment.
That was when they went to see my father.
Mark Satter was an attorney who lived in the racially changing neighborhood, North Lawndale.
What they asked of him was just to slow down the eviction. They said, you know, we only missed one payment. Like, we think we could pull this together. And if you could give us some time, you know, we could keep it.
Reviewing the Boltons' papers, Satter was surprised to see that they had paid 3 times what the seller had paid for it. In fact, he explained to the Boltons, this isn't a mortgage, it's a rent-to-own installment contract. And the man who drew it up, Jay Goran, he's the real owner.
After hearing this, they said we were misled in too many ways, and we want to sue him, and we want to stop this.
As Satter prepared his case, he learned that the Boltons were not alone.
And he realizes that throughout the south and west sides of the city, there are brokers who control large numbers of property, and they're all selling on contract, and they're all selling at these huge markups. And he realizes this is horrifically dangerous.
This was the way systems worked. It was a scheme by which someone, could go into a community and take one house and effectively turn it over and over and over and over again. You wanted to evict people. There was incentive to evict people.
Evictions? Contracts? Why? Satter asked himself. What's happening here?
Home ownership is the basis of a happy, contented family life. And now, through the use of a National Housing Act insured mortgage, is brought within the reach of all citizens on a monthly payment plan no greater than rent.
And that's how it works. Say the price of the home you want to buy is $15,000. You make a down payment of $2,000 and the bank lends you the balance, which you pay off at $110 a month for the next 25 years. Part of your payment goes for interest. That's what the bank charges for loaning you the money. The rest pays down your loan. That's your share of the house. With every monthly payment, your share of the house grows. That's called equity. What if you decide to move? You simply sell the house and keep your share. And if the house increases in value, you keep that too. This is how America's building its middle class, and individual families are building wealth, their financial nest eggs.
I know, that's how I bought my house, but that's not how Black people are treated. Let me show you. It starts with speculators, also called blockbusters. They go into a white neighborhood and knock on doors, telling white homeowners that the blacks are coming. Better sell now because the value of your house is going to drop if you don't. I can see your house is worth $15,000, but I'll give you $14,000. Scared, the white homeowner sells. Within days, the speculator hikes the price of the house and sells it to a black family for $27,000. The buyer makes a down payment of $2,000 and is obligated to make payments of $252 a month. So why would anyone buy a house at such a high markup? Because white-owned banks refuse to make loans to blacks, especially if they want to move into a white neighborhood. Desperate for a home and having no other options, they go to the speculator. The speculator draws up a contract. You think it's a mortgage, but it's not. A contract doesn't accrue equity until it's paid off in full. Nada. Nothing. No equity. See, it's right there in the small print. Just check the box and sign your name to agree. So what if you want to move after living in the house for, say, 10 or 15 years? You lose everything. Remember, you don't have equity. You don't have a nest egg to borrow against for your child's education, to make home repairs or pay for medical emergencies. And like the Bolton family, you miss one payment and you're evicted. There's incentive to evict the buyer so the speculator can keep all the money the family has paid and then resell the house to another buyer. Since the Boltons came to me, I've seen court records of hundreds of evictions on this model. Families on both sides are being built so that the speculators make a fortune buying low from whites and selling high to blacks. Federally insured mortgages to whites, price gouging contracts to blacks. Do you see what this is going to do to Chicago's black families and its neighborhoods?
So if you can just recall the statistics that I shared with you about Greater Englewood, that is what land sale contracts did to not only Greater Englewood, but it completely devastated the west side of Chicago. And this map that you see here is the number of land sale contracts that was sold to aspiring homeowners in Greater Englewood. And if you know anything about real estate, all you need is a few comps to understand how that's going to impact the value of your home. These red dots represent 90% of the aspiring black homeowners who were moving into the predominantly white neighborhood of Greater Englewood in the 50s and 60s. So what I like people to understand about this map is, imagine if all of these red dots, if all of those black people actually owned their homes, what would the home ownership rate be today? So to help you with that speculation, I want to point you to the Plunder of Black Wealth in Chicago report, the one that my current project was born out of. Once this report came out in 2018, it was reported on, and it was really important because it put a dollar amount to the amount of money stolen from the black homeowners, as well as the homeowners who had to stay in the rental market. And the lead researcher of this report, Amber Hindley, economist and dear friend, has words she would like to say about this report and the impact and what it means in the reparations movement.
About $3.4 to $4.3 billion in today's dollars was legally and unjustly stolen from the black community through contract selling. And I always want to point out that that's a totally low conservative number. The issue in and of itself was not contract selling, it was redlining. And redlining took money from us through contract selling, and we got a calculation for that. But it also took an additional surplus through the rental market. Because some people weren't even doing, like some people that would have owned but couldn't get a mortgage, they weren't fooling with the contract because they didn't know what that was. So they just kept renting. But they could have afforded to buy at that time if things had been fair and they had been given mortgages at reasonable interest rates. So I argue that redlining was the issue, contract selling was trash. Redlining was the issue. Redlining is the one that allowed contract selling, but also the rental market stole from black folk too. So that cost for housing is, I'm just gonna say in the trillions, highly speculative.
So I showed you the map of Greater Englewood land sale contracts. This is the map of Chicago, the number of land sale contracts in Chicago that was discovered through the report. And it was not required for the buyers or the sellers to document that they were selling on land sale contracts. So it's quite fascinating that Amber and her team was able to find this number, which means that obviously it was way more. But I also want to point out the neighborhoods. The neighborhoods that you see listed here where the land sale contracts are, those are the same neighborhoods that you all get told to not go to and visit. So there's the connection. The depreciation of the neighborhood turns into the advice that you get when you visit Chicago. Don't go visit those neighborhoods. So just to stress the point even more, I wanted to just share with you what Burl Satter, her father is the lawyer that worked with a group of residents that formed the Contract Buyers League on the West Side, who did come together to basically try to get legal recourse, but they lost. This is what she had to say.
You know, one of the tragic aspects of the whole land contract situation was that the people who first moved into a neighborhood like Uniondale or Inglewood, they were striving middle-class African Americans. They were leaving the Black Belt and trying to go to a place where there was more space and better schools and better housing stock. And so they were moving there with a lot of optimism and paying top dollar for these properties. So the idea, I think the myth today is that, well, these neighborhoods are poor because poor people live there, poor people have always lived there, and that explains it. We don't need to go any further, you know? Whereas in fact, wealth was in these communities and was taken out of these communities very systematically through the process of predatory land installment contracts.
So after discovering that report and befriending the lead researcher, I realized that in the map they didn't list the addresses, they didn't have the map. And I asked the lead researcher, Amber, can I get the addresses? And so she gifted me the addresses for those over 3,000 homes. And the 600 that were in Greater Inglewood, I started to drive around to see what do they look like now. And the culmination of that painful and shocking process turned into the project that I would do called Inequity for Sale.
In the 1950s and 60s, fake mortgages gave the holder all the responsibilities of a homeowner, but only the power of a renter. The predatory process stole more than 3,300 homes and counting from Black Chicagoans. And this is the focus of activist and artist Tonika Johnson's pop-up installation, Inequity for Sale, the latest in her game-changing and thought-provoking creative projects. I met up with her to find out why she picked this as a moment in history that she wanted to highlight.
So being from Greater Inglewood, growing up here and being a lifelong resident of it is really the motivation and inspiration for majority of my work. When you grow up in a neighborhood that has been historically disinvested in and you see how it impacts your personal life, it becomes the point of reference for a lot of my work. I had to travel outside of my neighborhood to obtain access to a lot of the artistic programs I was interested in. I went to high school on the north side because of the lower quality schools that were in the neighborhood as a result of disinvestment. So this issue has pretty much colored not only my life, but everybody who is from this neighborhood.
But now you got this new project called Inequity for Sale, partnering with the National Museum of Public Housing. How did that ball get rolling?
This report called The Plunder of Black Wealth came out, and it put a dollar amount on the money stolen from aspiring Black homeowners whose homes were sold to them on land sale contracts in the 50s and 60s. Greater Inglewood has gained the reputation of being like the poster child of everything wrong in Chicago, but this is the beginning of how that came to be. And so that's when I knew I wanted to do something to breathe new life into this report to help people understand this systemic issue in a more contemporary way.
So these land sale contracts, these scams as we call them, it was predatory lending in a sense, right?
Yes, so it was a discriminatory housing practice that not only sold homes at an extremely high markup to Black families who were redlined into certain communities, but they actually didn't own the homes and they thought they did. And so that's the insidious part of this discriminatory practice is that, one, it was just unfair, the actual markup of the homes, but also the lie. They were lied to. They didn't have a mortgage, and they were told that they did.
So your project identifies and shows what homes here in Inglewood were impacted by that.
So a lot of the homes that are in Inglewood now that are abandoned, a lot of the vacant lot, they were land sale contract properties. And so I view it as, we are living amongst evidence of this crime, this hidden evidence, and we didn't know it. And when we wonder why our homes in this neighborhood have been devalued, have not appreciated in the way that other neighborhoods have, it's because of this history. So this project is identifying a collection of those land sale contract homes and putting land markers in front of them to acknowledge what happened here in this neighborhood and to memorialize the actual homeowners who were really pioneers. So that is Inequity for Sale. Oh, thank you. Thank you. I created 13 land markers. These are the addresses for them. There's one land marker left over that I will be hopefully working with my new reparations tribe to determine where that should go, but it definitely will be one of the banking institutions that were part of perpetrating this. But I want to bring your attention to this specific land marker. On the land marker, I actually use information from the research and the report. I include the name of the black couple, the year that they were sold their land sale contract, and as you can clearly see on the actual land marker, it says this crime was never brought to justice, reparations are due. But this specific land marker is where the project takes a really beautiful turn, and I'm not gonna cry. Okay. It takes a beautiful turn because I was able to meet the descendant of one of the couples after placing this land marker, and I was able to meet him because of TJ, who's here today with us, my friend. If you could just raise your hand so that they can understand, he's right there. This is also the unexpected power of what art and engagement can do. After I put the landmark up in front of this house, he called me and said, those are my great-grandparents. And so that's what's not revealed in the report, and it's really powerful. And so once TJ and I got together to talk about this strange twist of the project, he told me about his grandfather, who is the son of the couple. And I just want you to hear his voice just a little bit.
The landmarker part of my project was stolen, and
we'll get into that
in
later.
its place, we actually have the son of the black couple who was sold this home on a land sale contract. So can you tell me what your name is and what you remember about the house, or how you felt when you saw the sign come up?
My name is Melvin Walls, and my mother and father's Doc Walls and John Ellen Walls. And I have, it was 9 of us in all, right now 6. 3 of us gone, I hate to say, but it's still 6 left. But, back in the day when I was around about, I think we moved in the neighborhood when I was around about 6 or 7 years old. And it was a beautiful place to be in.
Just for the sake of time, I'm gonna move on, but that's TJ's granddad. And he's being the best grandson because once him and I connected, he explained to me why he was basically staying with his grandparents to help them. The block is 65th and Aberdeen, and he said that he was trying to help his grandparents repair the home. So the piece of information that he was able to provide to expand the research of this report that no one would know is that his great-grandparents actually finished the land sale contract. They were able, a lot of black families did, even though it took long, hard work, they did. However, his great-grandparents were able to purchase the house that his grandfather lives in, right? So generational wealth, you think. But because this land sale contract scam happened to so many people in this one neighborhood, it depreciated the value of homes in the neighborhood, which leads to our 30% home ownership rate. And because of that depreciation, even though the home is paid for, was basically given to him by his parents, they cannot afford the much needed repairs. This is a home that's over 100 years old. It has significant repairs, but because of the depreciation, they can't take out a home loan because the repairs they need cost more than the home. Also, they can't do an insurance claim because the repairs, the housing value determines how much you're gonna get. So you see where I'm going with this. So once he explained that, and he also said that the other elderly people on the block who are the homeowners, who are the engine that have been keeping the neighborhood alive, are also struggling with the same thing, that's when TJ and I wanted to do something. Because it's one thing to use art to call out an issue, but how can we use art to help solve it? So at the same time TJ and I had this conversation, the city of Chicago, who loves art, they announced this initiative called the Creative Place Program. And they were putting a large amount of money behind this Creative Place Program. It's a federal art program, and the city of Chicago was disseminating it by awarding up to 10 artists in collaboration with a nonprofit organization to do art that would uplift history, that would do something transformative to a space. So once I saw that dollar amount after the conversation TJ and I had, I said, okay, this is a Robin Hood moment that needs to happen. But I want to share with you the grant details so you can understand how the arts funding space, what they want to fund. And so as you can see from some of these examples, they're doing the typical things, oh, a sculpture, oh, do a community garden. And I'm not saying any of those things aren't important. However, when you're awarding up to $500,000 for 10 artists to do something, in a neighborhood that's disinvested, because that was the priority neighborhoods for this particular grant, I personally think it's insulting to do something like a sculpture, especially when you've met residents who need actual repairs. So in order to justify my case, I applied for $500,000 using this as inspiration. I think we all know that when you go visit New Orleans, the homes are the art. It's no doubt about it. When you decorate and care for a home, it does become art, and especially if people do it all on the same block. And then I also used my big sister in art, Amanda Williams, her project as reference. She actually painted homes in Greater Englewood that were set to be demolished, beautiful colors that culturally were culturally significant to Black people. Pink luster pink, Newport blue, Crown Royal bag purple. So you can imagine that these homes were literally art, right? So I use that as precedence to apply for investing in homes. And I applied in partnership with Chicago Bungalow Association. They are an amazing nonprofit that provides resources to people who own homes over 100 years old. But their issue is that they get the calls from the Black homeowners on the South and West Side who want more than resources. They want to know how they can get their homes fixed. There is no support for them. So that's why it was easy for them to be a collaborator with me on this. So this is my organizational ally. And so together we partnered to apply for $500,000, and we were awarded $250,000. And with the support of another foundation, Chicago Community Trust, we applied for an additional $100,000 using the same premise that the transformative public art will be the homes. And after you repair the homes, then you can work on cosmetic exterior beautification, then you can tackle the vacant lots. But I want to share a story of Daylon, who is a representative of many of us in our neighborhood, in our communities, who sometimes might be gifted a home and have never been a homeowner. They get grandmother's home, and they don't know what to do with it, and it needs a lot of repairs. And Daylon is one of TJ's neighbors, and that was his story. His grandmother passed, and he had never been a homeowner, and he acquired this property that has significant damage. He couldn't even rent the upstairs because the roof was a problem. And so it was at the time that we were awarded this grant that we were able to bring him on board so that he could get repairs. We have since been able to provide him with $36,000 of repairs. He got a whole new roof. He's now able to rent the second floor if he chooses, but that is through this program called Unblocked. And so I want to play for you. Oh, I just wanted, you can get more information on the website. I'm trying to see why I won't. Okay. So to date, on this block, there's 24 buildings to date through this project that has been going on for a year and a half now. I mean, really 2 years, but active with money and repairs for the past year. There's 24 buildings on this block, which consist of 2 flats and 3 flats, so that's more units even though it's 24 buildings. There's 22 vacant lots and about 75 residents. Most of them are seniors who are homeowners. And through this project, we have been able to actually do repairs for 19 units that make up 11 of the 24 buildings. And next year, we're gonna be doing repairs to the remainder, 13. But we're also trying to raise money to do additional repairs. So the beauty about this project, which can help prove beyond a shadow of a doubt, like Dr. Tillery said, is that because we had to do assessments for each home of the extensive repairs, we now have an estimate of what it would cost to bring these homes back to just appropriate living conditions, as well as the amount of money it's going to take to do those repairs. And this block is a microcosm of what Greater Inglewood looks like. So not only is it a project, but it's also potentially an example of the amount of money it would cost to repair one block in Greater Inglewood. So we could easily multiply those hard numbers that we do have from the assessment, as well as from the report that has the actual dollar amount that was stolen from aspiring Black homeowners to further our reparations movement in Chicago. Thank you. So I want to leave you with this. This is the voice of Miss Justine, who is, I'm not even going to explain who she is because she does it. So I'm going to share this with you, as well as show you some of the actual work getting done to the block on 65th and Aberdeen.
My name is Justine Mosley Steffens. I am not a resident of Inglewood, but I am an investor of Inglewood. I grew up in Inglewood. My mother moved in Inglewood with 9 children in 1958. I am now 75 years old. I started in real estate when I was 23 years of age. And it is something that I have a passion for due to the community. I feel that giving back to the community is a blessing. That I'm able to do that is a blessing. And I am very proud of what I'm doing because I do have the residents, a lot of the residents of Inglewood that stepped in to say, let's do, and we're doing it. You know, so it was rough. So when we got involved with the Chicago Bungalow Association and the Unblocked Project, when we got involved with that, I didn't believe it. At first, I was kind of reluctant to get involved. And I said, no, I don't want to be bothered with that. Then when they told me that what the program consists of and how it would work. And I thought about the other homeowners on the block that could not do their work. They could not afford to do it. Then I said, why not? Let's get together and bring the block residents, tenants, owners, all together. 8 to 80, blind, crippled, or crazy. Let's bring them together and let's see what we can do. And it has been a success since then. Neighbors are coming out. It's not their paper on the ground, but they come out their doors and they're picking it up. They're cleaning their alleys. They're dumping the garbage properly in the proper containers. We're cutting down trees and weeds, and it's just marvelous to see how great thou art.
So I think it's appropriate to close on the words of Miss Justine, and I'm not sure if we have time for a couple of questions, but while you all think about any oh, look, that's my, good, perfect timing. Time for a couple of questions. I just want to stress, thank you all, I just want to stress the importance of bridging the gap between the Black creative community and the reparations community. And I just want to thank Robin for having the vision to do that and invite me in this space that she knew I would feel like home in. So I just want to go ahead and open it up for questions and comments. Hi.
All right. Hey, everybody. Thank you so much, Tonika, for that presentation. My name's Nikki. I'm with the Resident Association of Greater Inglewood, so I know exactly this firsthand, and we just deeply appreciate this work, and it's something that we see in our own work. Part of what we do is map the vacant properties in Inglewood, and you're right. It's a remarkable start, and part of like what we're doing is doing things like our Black Lining Grant, which gives $1,000 to African American homeowners, first-time homeowners, to sort of help offset that redlining. And so I'm curious about, because we actually just got a report from our data manager that showed well over 12 blocks that had more than 5 vacant properties per block. So I'm curious about that number in terms of like how much. We estimate about $300,000 per property to properly rehab. And so I'm curious about sort of what you found in the last year and a half, in the last 2 years. Is that like a comparable number per property?
Oh, for sure. On this specific block on 65th and Aberdeen, there's a few vacant properties, but we were specifically trying to target existing homeowners, that 30% who's struggling to actually get repairs done so that we can keep them in their homes. Because one way to make sure that the home ownership rate increases in neighborhoods like Greater Inglewood is supporting the existing homeowners who have been the engine, and they're struggling. They need help. They can't even access free weatherization programs because one of the criteria for that program is you can't have any structural issues. You have to have proper roof.
Right.
That's the major issue, and that's the most costly, and a lot of homeowners in Greater Inglewood struggle with that. So the homes that are vacant, that's a whole nother initiative, because in order to get them move-in ready, you do have to invest in a lot. But as a creative thinker, I think it's opportunity to partner with land preservation organizations to help institute how you can get some dollars in order to offset some of those costs. I know Landmarks Illinois, they have a program, and they definitely have funders who is into preservation. So just off the cuff, that would be one way.
Awesome. Yeah, I wanted to say too, to your point about all the neighborhoods that people tell people not to go to when you're from outside of Chicago, please go to Inglewood and spend some money. For real. No, I'm really real with that, because there's a $300 million annual retail leakage in Inglewood. Can you imagine what would happen if that $300 million stayed in the 606, 21, and 36? So to Tonika's point, if you have the time, I hope you can make the time before you leave this weekend. Please go to Inglewood and spend a lot of money. Okay, I'm done. Thank you.
And outside of spending a lot of money, you have 3 representatives of Resident Association of Greater Inglewood here. So please connect with them. They're doing some amazing work that definitely aligns with the movement. I don't know. I'm horrible at this. Okay.
Thank you very much for your outstanding presentation. I am a Chicago resident. I live in Chatham.
It's a beautiful neighborhood.
Fortunately, my parents did not get one of those contracts. My dad actually did get a mortgage. But what I'm thinking is, since our dearly beloved mayor, who I campaigned for, although he's not doing too well in the public side now, but since he says that there's $150 million for migrants, and he is on record, Cam, to want to work with some sort of reparations program, a suggestion to have a dollar amount, and perhaps the Inglewood and Lawndale neighborhood associations, along with aldermen, can put a dollar amount for what it would be to have some, quote, reparations to make these homes in Inglewood and Lawndale and other places habitable, to increase their market value.
Yeah.
So I think you have a great project. I commend you for that. And I think we need to push him to do something. And here is something that there is demonstration proof that it does work. Thank you.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, my name is Phyllis Utley, and I live in the Parish of the Mountains called Asheville, North Carolina. And I just want to say how inspired I am by your work. I'm a creative as well as a reparationist, and Asheville is so full of artsy things, okay? They always talk about the arts. And I'm thinking, whoa, this is a game changer for me going back home. I'm just telling you.
Get them art dollars.
Hey, thank you.
And this will be the, we'll close out with Mr. Cam. I think that's appropriate.
I don't know why I'm always last at everything. I'm had to go back and just really go into meditation and find out why. But I just want to say a little bit about Inglewood and its plunder as well. I grew up in Inglewood for a number of years, since in the 60s up until the 80s. And my first real estate investment was back in Inglewood.
Wow.
I bought a fourplex in 1999 for about $85,000, renovated it. About 6 years later, I sold it for about $300,000. And right after that, 2007, the market crashed. And I sold several pieces of properties in the same year. And everyone that I sold those properties to, they lost their property in the market crash. That first fourplex that I bought stayed vacant until last year, and it sold for $42,000.
Wow.
That's the type of plunder, continued plunder. And we lost from 2007 to 2012 in Chicago, we lost another $3 to $4 billion in equity during the predatory lending crisis, which they knew we were going to default on those mortgages. That's what made it so criminal. Nationally, as black people, we lost $300 billion in wealth during that particular, $200 billion out of the $380 billion wealth. 60% of our wealth was extracted from us. So there's been multiple periods of multi-billion-dollar plunder from our communities. And then you get the message, don't go into Inglewood or West Lawndale. But you've been plundered us to death. What do you expect?
Exactly.
So I really appreciate what you're doing. It's magnificent. And
thank you.
However I can help.
We'll also help just by including creatives and artists to assist with messaging, to assist with being a part of the media. In Greater Inglewood, we're very intentional about making sure that we utilize the media, because that is the dominant narrative of not only Chicago, but our country. And so to Dr. Tilley's point and you all's point about how to mobilize and push this conversation forward, lean on the creative community. And then also there are very nerdy creatives who get inspired by reports and commissions and can really think about innovative ways to do engagement. So that's a way to assist, and also just by using the projects as inspiration. And So if you are interested in learning more, you can go to the website. You can also follow me on Instagram. I share about my work. My handle is Tonika J, but I am here with you all for the rest of the conference, so we'll talk.